Welcome, everyone. I'm Jesse Mogul, and thank you for tuning in to the American Contingency Podcast. Here at American Contingency, we are a united nationwide community of steadfast Americans ready to face any challenge that comes our way. Our mission here at AMCON is to inform you by equipping you with the knowledge and training you need to prepare for any man-made or natural disaster. Through active participation in our community, you'll have the opportunity to grow by learning from others' experiences and sharing your own. Together, we build resilience and strength through shared knowledge and mutual support. I love doing that intro because that means we are starting up another episode of the American Contingency Podcast. And a quick little note that I am not feeling too well, and I've got a lot of congestion, and my voice sounds raspy to me, and it might sound raspy to you, or at least now that I've put in that a bit of situational awareness around how I'm feeling, you might now notice it. So there might be some pausing here and there in order for me to cough off mic, and I will ask for your gentleness as you go to listen to this if I don't necessarily edit everything together to sound like I wasn't making pauses. But the show must go on because this is Situational Awareness Month over here at American Contingency. And having discussed last week my experience with the AMCON Adventure Challenge here in the SEC up in Tennessee, gorgeous. I had a lot of fun. I know I laughed a lot. I hope you laughed with me. I thought what a great opportunity this would be to discuss situational awareness this month, leading into our last 2 months of the year where we're going to discuss defense and home and family. Now, next month, I've got a really great interview coming in from one of our members. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet, but he definitely works a lot with the mental health care world like I do in my other life outside of AMCON. And so we're going to talk about defending your mental health and wellness regardless of what's going on in the world, whether it be politics or religion or social justice issues or just any of the many ways we as humans seem to find opportunities to conflict with one another. We're going to discuss defending your own mental health and wellness, especially with the holidays coming up. It can be a stressful time, seeing family that you might be a bit distant from, spending money that you don't have, putting yourself into debt, trying to make the holidays a special time for your family. Certainly mental health and wellness is important during November and December. It's always important. It just seems to take on an extra bit of urgency whenever we start getting into the end of the year and we start taking stock of what we've done with the year and the like. And then, of course, we'll finish with home and family in December, which seems very apropos because of what I just mentioned about the holidays and spending so much time with family members. So great couple months coming up, finishing the year strong. I cannot believe 2025 is right around the corner. I swear, life just continues to move fast. I don't know how a 7-year-old experiences time, but a 47-year-old experiences it very quickly. But let's talk about situational awareness, since I did just hint to a 7-year-old, because we live in a world where, certainly for those of us who are Gen Xers, and absolutely for you boomers out there, we're very used to a childhood that had a lot less things to distract us. Yes, we could sit at home and play our Colecos or our Nintendo 8-bit, 16 bits and, really enjoy our MTV. And certainly for you boomers out there, you remember your childhood and teenage years being a lot of uncertainty in the social justice world, certainly. But as music really began to take off, we found society really growing in ways that we could not have predicted coming out of World War II. And now here we are in what is the technological age. This is the information age. There's so many distractions. There's so much information coming out. Is it any wonder that children and teenagers today feel overwhelmed because they just got thrust into this world? And while we might think that because they've grown up with smartphones all around them and devices and the internet, that it would be more, let's just say, behaviorally structured within their cerebral cortex to just slide right into the current society and the way that we're operating. I find it might be the other way around, where us boomers and Gen Xers who had a chance to sort of ramp into the speed at which society is running has allowed us to pace ourselves through all of the changes versus just dropping a child into the middle of like this cheetah race, we were all able to go from relatively slow-paced lives to ones that were far more hectic. Imagine if you were just born into a stampede of buffalo across the Serengeti versus being able to just slowly ramp up with the herd of buffalo. I think it might not be buffalo. It could be gazelle, or there's other water buffalo. Don't be picturing the buffalo that we used to have in the Great American Plains. Be picturing those ones with much bigger horns out there. There's a video on YouTube where an alligator and a lion fight over a water buffalo. It's really interesting, and the water buffalo lives. So picture that water buffalo, and they all start to slowly run, and then before you know it, they pick up the pace, and now it's a stampede across the Serengeti. We were able to ramp up versus a kid today just being thrown into the stampede. And so because of this fast-paced, tech-driven world that we live in, it's extremely important that we're teaching our kids how to be situationally aware and safe. This is home, school, with friends. They're so easily distracted by phones and music and social interactions, and in reality, we all are. But specifically, the kids don't necessarily have the training to refocus themselves when they hear a loud noise, a jackhammer, a car door slamming, a glass breaking. Well, they might react. They don't necessarily know what to do once the reaction portion's done, and now it's time for a response. So we're going to explore how parents can teach children to be observant and to stay focused in all these different environments. There's first aid opportunities all around them, especially if they're out running around in the neighborhood with the kids. Hopefully you have kids who go outside and play. And we want them to remain calm, be able to help themselves, help others, and in a myriad of situations. And because we're in AmCon, clearly we care about this stuff for ourselves. And so there's going to be opportunities to gamify a lot of this stuff. And what do I mean by gamify? I've got a friend who teaches children how to behave outside of the home. And she has a very good business doing this in California. She helps other parents teach their kids how to behave outside the home. And she gamifies it by saying, okay, let's play the game of airport. Let's play the game of restaurant. And then at home, we get to reenact what it would be like to go to a restaurant, be handed a menu, sit in the chair, not make a lot of fuss, not make a lot of noise. She makes sure that she still brings crayons and coloring books rather than handing them a device. And she teaches them how to behave in public. In the airport, it's holding each other's hands. It's not setting your suitcase down and walking away from it. She teaches these kids this stuff in the comfort of their own home, so when they leave the home, they're more apt to behave that way. Now, we as Gen Xers and Boomers might think it's preposterous that we have to go through this kind of tutelage. I understand that the way we were raised is not the way that kids are being raised today. We also didn't have the internet where you could Google something and get lost in a rabbit hole, and before you know it, you're watching videos that are absolutely inappropriate for your age range or your cognitive abilities. We wanted to know how to fix something or how to learn something cool about the Romans, and we had to go use a Dewey Decimal System. Now you can just literally talk into your phone, and the entire scope of human knowledge is at your fingertips. And there's probably a fair amount of it that's misinformation to boot. So when this woman plays this game with these kids, it's just an interesting opportunity to teach children how to behave outside the home in a lot of different situations. And with the gamification of it, the children find it to be more fun than we're going to sit here and you're going to shut up and you're going to be, speak when spoken to. That worked in the 80s. It doesn't seem to be working now. So let's just be in the modern times and work with the way that human brains have evolved over the last 40 to 70 years rather than against it. So opportunities for gamification are going to be really awesome, especially like fire drill. Like, let's make it a race, see how fast everybody can get their go bag and meet out in the backyard underneath the swing set. All right? It doesn't have to feel like you're putting them through chores in order to do some of this stuff. It can actually be quite fun if you frame it that way. Because a 5, 7, 9, 13-year-old is only they're going to follow the lead of the parents. And if one of you thinks that this is stupid and rolls your eyes and keeps saying, honey, this is dumb, why are we bothering with this? Then the kids are going to pick up on that. And if they find it to not be that enjoyable either, they're going to roll with the dissent, and then the entire exercise is just blown up. And we want children to realize that you cannot always be there as much as you might desire to be, want to protect them, never want to see them in pain. Pain is where we learn. Frustration is where we grow. Confusion is where we come up with new ideas. We want children to have some level of suffering early on, because if they don't experience it in their younger years, they're going to be completely blown away by it when it starts to show up in high school and college, and they have no social, emotional, psychological coping skills developed because you were constantly running interference with the world around them. So this is why situational awareness is important. And I get it. Let's set the stage for a moment. You're a parent, or you are an uncle, an aunt, a sibling, something to that regard. You know children in your lives. If you don't have some sort of young human being in your sphere of influence, write me and let me know how you pulled that one off. So our primary job as adults, and specifically parents, is to keep the children safe. But we cannot always be with them. That's why we want to teach them situational awareness and the importance of it. Being mindful of their surroundings, recognizing potential dangers, knowing how to act, behave, respond. There's a big difference between reacting emotionally surged and responding emotionally grounded. And I talk about this on my sobriety recovery podcast all the time, because people will think that they're responding when in fact they're reacting in an emotionally charged state. You're not going to be making your best decisions when your limbic system and your amygdala are in charge rather than your prefrontal cortex. You don't want to be in the reptilian brain. We're looking for that prefrontal rational brain to be in charge. And children already are in their reptilian brain 99% of the time. Getting them to be in a rational state is not somewhere you normally find a 9-year-old. Yes, Mommy and Daddy, let's discuss the theory of relativity and how it's appropriate to utilize during a fire drill. If you have that kid, again, write me and let me know what you did to create that existence into your life. I'll make sure I do an entire episode about that. So let's talk about situational awareness at home, first of all, because the challenge there is that kids feel really comfortable at home. It's the place where they get to relax, they get to forget about all the world around them, potential hazards, and it's very understandable. We want to all feel relaxed at home. But it reminds me of something my dad taught me when I first learned how to drive back when I was 16. And I don't know if this was statistically true or not, but it certainly sunk in, and I've used it as a filter ever since he said it to me. He said, Jesse, most car accidents will happen within 2 miles of your home because you're so used to being around that area that you let your guard down and you go off and you go into daydream land, you go into trance world. I'm paraphrasing now. I say trance world, but he said something to the effect of, you just get comfortable, you turn down your ability to notice things around you, and that's going to put you more at the cause and effect of your negative driving habits and somebody else not paying attention as well. Because if you're near your home and it's in the neighborhood and all that jazz, other people are also near their home. And this is going to up the opportunities for accidents. And I'll never forget that, because it reminded me that like when you are in a general area that you're extremely familiar with, you begin to relax, you take your guard down. And I'm not wanting everyone to be completely flexed and jacked up on adrenaline all the time, but there is an opportunity within situational awareness to be calm, but also be observant and to be mindful of anything that you might trance yourself off into and just not be aware of the things that are going on around you. We as adults are very prone to hearing noises outside of the house that we're not familiar with, to potentially hearing somebody's footsteps on the front porch or the garage door open, or the shift in the way that the dishwasher sounds that could alert us to something going wrong or off about the dishwasher, noticing how the air conditioner is turning off and on, and is that how it normally sounds, or is something going awry? Kids are not aware of this stuff. They haven't been trained. They don't know to be paying attention to somebody jiggling the doorknob unless they're told. Hell, if you haven't said don't answer the door for strangers, they might just assume it's a next door neighbor. You just don't know. And if you don't have the conversation, do you really want to leave it up to chance? So let's encourage our kids to lock doors, to stay alert to unusual sights and sounds around the house. If you've got lights that are triggered by the movement in the yard, and yeah, you might got some raccoons or some squirrels that set it off from time to time, but let them know to be alert for that and to come get you or to look out the window and see what might be going on. I mean, yeah, it could be a deer. It could also be somebody looking to be nefarious. Try setting up these small drills like I mentioned at the beginning, where it could be fire, it could be earthquake, it could be robbery, it could be whatever you want it to be. Again, gamify it and be like, let's all play the game of, water rising, river flooding, house getting taken down the river. Whatever might be more, let's just say, appropriate for your environmental awareness, utilize that. I mean, if you're in California, earthquake drills are a great idea. Maybe not so much in Nebraska, where a tornado drill would be more appropriate. But have them practice quickly identifying exit routes, their go back, having their electronics, the things that they would want if they needed to evacuate, because we're certainly going to know what we need to have. And in the process of running out of the house, trying to grab our jewelry or our weapons out of the gun cabinet or our stocks and bond certificates we have in our safe, whatever the heck you got going on, do you really want to be thinking about whether your kids got their iPad and the charger for it? They need to be in charge of their own stuff. I'd say as soon as they can understand, if they can set an iPad down and then throw a temper tantrum because they can't find it, they are old enough to be taught how to not lose it in the house and how to make sure that they have a bag that they can grab when you need to get out in a hurry. So would a 3-year-old necessarily be able to pack their own bag? I don't know. I haven't figured that out as far as life development with a 3-year-old. But I would imagine by the time a kid's 5 or 6 years old, they should have a general understanding of the things that they would want if they were in a car stuck on a road in an evacuation scenario. Also, let's talk about the kitchen real fast. I have worked in restaurants and hospitality off and on for a substantial amount of my life. When you work in restaurants, you're used to saying things like corner, behind, coming through hot, because when you're walking around in the kitchen, there's a lot of people who could bump into you. When you're a bartender, you're a server coming around a corner, coming out, tray, behind, backside, front, side, all of these things. Extremely important to say whenever there's a lot of people in a hustling, bustling area. Are you doing anything like that in your own home? Are there thoughts about warning your kids about hot stoves and sharp objects and how to handle them safely? If you're coming through with a hot boiling pan of water and there happens to be a door from the upstairs bonus room that leads into the kitchen and you're getting ready to pass in front of that, have you pushed that door closed so that you could hear the doorknob engaged in order to know that somebody might potentially hit you while you've got a boiling pan of water? Have you taught the kids to say, to knock on the door, say coming out, and open the door safely? These are opportunities to increase situational awareness for your kids and just really be able to help guide them towards understanding how safety routines can be fun. They can be interesting. Whether it's secure the fort gamification, where you make sure all the windows are locked and all the drapes are pulled when a storm's coming, or whenever you're getting ready to leave the house for a couple days on vacation, the kids can participate if you encourage them and show them how you would like things to be done. Number 2, or just sort of rudimentary going through this list, awareness in the neighborhood. Right, we want kids outside playing, walking, biking. Hopefully you don't live in an area where a kid trying to walk a mile from school all of a sudden gets cops called and it turns into this whole, thing on the social media. But we want kids to feel like they can be walking around and playing in the neighborhood. I feel like we were much more worried about kidnappings in the 70s, 80s, and 90s than we currently are. So it seems very interesting how much attention is paid towards kids running around in the neighborhood and whether that's safe. If you want to, wrap your kid with bubble wrap, but again, at some point they're going to fall down and cut themselves. They need to know how to pick themselves back up, slap a Band-Aid on it, rub some dirt on it, and go out there and give it a go. We want them outside playing with their friends, listening to music. We want them enjoying themselves, but if they're always staring at their phones, if they're completely tranced out to what's going on around them, they may not notice the car that's circled the neighborhood 3 or 4 times. So let's teach them to be alert when they're crossing streets. Oh my goodness, when it comes to crossing streets. At what point did people become so entitled that they just step out into the street like, screw it, hit me, I'll sue you? Well, if you just step out into the street without looking both ways, and I'm going the speed limit and I'm following all the legal laws, there's only so much you can take my insurance for. And you're not going to be able to take me to civil court because you stepped out in the middle of the stupid road without looking both ways, and I was going 35 in a 35 mile an hour zone. Like, there's some culpability you have to pay attention to yourself. And do you really want to have a messed up leg, back, neck for the rest of your life for $75,000? Like, I've talked to people about their thinking when it comes to the looking both ways before crossing, and it's just like, man, screw it, hit me, I'll sue you. Like, I don't think that's going to turn out as well as you think it's going to turn out for you. So let's teach kids to look both ways before crossing the street constantly, not just once. Like, man, if children of the 80s and 90s and below, I promise you, we're scanning that entire time as long as I know that I am in an area where a car could hit me, because I don't want your $75,000. I want to keep walking. So let's look up from our phones. Let's pause the music. Let's listen to the environment. Are there sirens coming? Maybe people can just run red lights, and that's another thing. Even if you've looked both ways, somebody could still do something nefarious with their car, run a red light, not see you, and the happy version of that story I just told is that we get to sue the insurance company and get to walk away with, a six-figure settlement. The not so happy version of that is getting creamed by a vehicle that's 2,000 pounds, and we're all walking around substantially more let's just say vulnerable to a 2,000-pound vehicle hitting us. So when they're outside walking or biking home, make sure they know safe routes. Encourage them to stay in well-lit areas, busy areas where there are other people around. Know when the street lights, where they're at and when they come on. And you can do this by simply just going out with your kids in the neighborhood, pointing out potential hazards, blind intersections, potholes, things of that nature, so that they're just mindful to be observant of these things. Schools and playgrounds, right? This is where they can easily get distracted by friends and games, and right? I mean, if there's ever a place for somebody to be nefarious, you would probably go to where a lot of kids are going to accumulate. Certainly playgrounds and schools are those, and while most of our schools are locked up like prisons nowadays because of the amount of school shootings that have been happening in our society for the last 20 or so years, there's still opportunities for the child to find themselves in a very unsafe predicament. And now we want to be role-playing scenarios about something less deadly than a gun in school, but certainly facing bullying, seeing other people fight. That can really be challenging emotionally, and how to cope with watching a couple other people beat each other up, or being pushed or shoved or hit. Are you providing an open communication opportunity with your kids to let you know when they might be getting bullied at school? What are some of the steps they could take to alert other adults around? Again, in the 80s, it was sort of like just stand up for yourself and push back. I don't think that's the way that it's treated anymore. So let's encourage them to pay attention to their surroundings at school, to be mindful of standing up for others when appropriate and bringing adults in whenever that's appropriate. It's just being able to gauge, and again, rationality versus emotionality, being able to understand when they should engage in something and when they should come and go find somebody who's in charge. That's going to help them understand whether they're running away from an issue or helping solve the issue. And certainly their safety is important, but there's a good chance that their friends are also going to be in that area when unsafe things are going down, and there's also a good chance you're friends with your kid's parents. So you may not want to have your kid not helping when they could, or putting themselves in danger when they shouldn't. And maybe a good parent meeting and discussing the way that everybody wants to help sort of co-parent and raise, and all of you coming up to like, hey, why don't we show our kids this cool stuff? Because once one kid's doing it and the other kids start doing it, now you've got an entire social circle of your kids' friends who are all staying alert and being mindful of their situational awareness. So certainly if you have those kind of relationships with your kids' parents, with your kids' friends' parents, I would highly recommend that you bring them into this conversation. shopping in public places and assemblies, large gatherings, events. This is where we absolutely want kids to be aware of wandering off, setting things down that are valuable to them, right? A rule such as, if I can't see you, you can't see me. And being like, let's have something that we can, yell out if we're looking for each other, not one another's names necessarily, because certainly other people could have that name. When I go hiking with my friends, we have this little thing. We did this at the AmCon Challenge, but when I first started doing this, hiking up mountains with my buddies, I would yell, "Nothing can stop me," and then the other person would respond, "All the way up," because that was our thing. We were going to go all the way up to the top of the mountain. And so if one of us wanted to sit down and rest and the other one wanted to go ahead and just scope out the trail, we could just, the person, down mountain could just yell, "Nothing can stop me," and the other person would respond, "I'm all the way up." And that would just let us know that we're still within earshot of each other. So if we were to fall, trip, and hurt ourselves, we could still be able to reach the other one to provide services. So certainly coming up, with something, you could yell platypus across the entire parking lot or the event space. I highly doubt many people are going to use platypus as their safe word. Aardvark, whatever you choose, just know that there's opportunities to use auditory anchors to alert your kids that if they are far away from you, to get back to you. You are the center of the safety. You are the center of the situational awareness. Help kids understand key locations like exit signs, customer service desks, any kind of hospitality center. Anytime you go to a concert, they're going to have some sort of customer service, general hospitality desk where people can go to find out information, to drop off lost technology. If you get separated from your kids, let them know. When you go to one of these events, go up to somebody who is wearing this particular outfit, tell them that you're lost, and get them and tell them you need to go to the customer service desk, and then the security officer will take your child there, and you'll be able to locate them even though you're in a stadium full of people watching a football game, or you're at a concert with 30,000 other fans. You really miss out on a major opportunity to guide your kids if you don't talk to them about this stuff. Just assuming that they'll know because you've told them 5 other times you've been to a soccer event, then let me finish that thought. Just assuming that they'll know because you've told them 5 times is foolish. Let's go ahead and just make sure. And you can simply ask them, we've discussed this in the past, if we get separated, what would you do? And hear what their response is. And do this for as long as you want to in their life, because their safety is more important than them reiterating something that they've already told you and that they already feel like they know. Better to keep practicing something and discussing it than just leave it to chance. Because you get lost in a gigantic group of people, and the kid could get flustered, and we want them to fall back on muscle memory. We don't want them to fall into that panic state where they start to freak out, and now they're running around, and that now they've wandered down some random hallway in a major event space that leaves them even more susceptible to a nefarious person. So we want them to be able to calmly, even though they might feel panicked on the inside, say, wait, I know what to do here. Find somebody with a security jacket and get them to take me to customer service so that they can announce my mom and dad's name over the loudspeaker, right? So finding trusted adults, store employees, things of that nature are certainly going to be helpful. I cannot stress enough about understanding nearest exits, and just is that the best one? Like, there's a lot of events I go to, and I spot out the ones, and I'm like, especially if let's say it's a concert and there's a pit area, there might be a couple exits on either side of the pit. But something goes sideways during that event, and that's not the exit that I want. I'm not even sure I want the one in the 300s. If I have an ability to get down to the 200s or the 100s extremely quickly, that puts me closer to ground level. I'm not stuck on as many flights of stairs, and I'm able to exit the facility much quicker than if I ran up, because I know that exit. That's how I got to my seat. But by simply going down 40 steps, which if the stairwell is completely packed and you're in, let's say, an amphitheater, just step on the wooden benches. Now you're closer to getting to the 200s, the 100s exits, and you're not going to be stuck on a stairwell with 10,000 other people trying to fit into a space that, while wide, isn't prepared for that many people at once. Let's discuss some first aid as well. Sprained ankles, cuts and scrapes, sharp objects and falls. Right? There's the Rice method where you could, with sprained ankles, sprained any kind of body part, where you rest, ice, compress, elevate. Now, will your kids have ice in the woods if they're running around with their friends? More than likely, I'm going to go with no. They're not carrying around a bag of ice, let alone, like, let's say, an ice compression bag, something that you could, like, break that would immediately get cold. But certainly understanding that, oh, wow, let's elevate, let's compress it. How far away from the house? Let's send another friend to go get help. Let's not leave them alone in the woods with an injured ankle. But certainly if there is, you know where you're at and you know you can get back to your friend because you're not that deep into the woods, or you're really just 300 yards into the woods right by your friend's house, then talk to them about these things so that they can support their friend, or their friend could learn how to support them if they're the ones with a sprained ankle. Certainly kids are going to get themselves into some situations where they hurt themselves. Bleeding, banged up, bruises, whether it's applying pressure or a bandage or just having some sort of opportunity to pour some of the water from their water bottle on it and wrap it up with a handkerchief that they carry in their backpack. Like, if you talk them through these things and show them, just like I learned at the MCon challenge, like, you think showing them a video and talking to them about this stuff is enough. Certainly I have had many an interview with people, not on necessarily the show, but just in general life, where I ask people, what's your preparedness level? How do you feel about first aid? What's your go bag situation looking like? And they're like, oh, we got a couple things in it, or we've watched some videos and I feel like the kids know enough. Nothing beats hands-on. It just doesn't. And if you gamify it, right, squirt some ketchup all over your daughter's forearm and see if your son knows how to wrap it up. I mean, just play with it, because it's in the opportunity to actually act upon this knowledge that it sinks in. You can talkie all day long, but it does not mean that it's sinking in. You can then see how they behave in these situations, even if it is just a gamified scenario. It's still an opportunity for you to just get an idea of how they might behave. And like I learned at the MCon challenge, the deeper I got into the scenario and the more I got into the role playing, not only did it become more fun, but the more engaged I was with each one of the stations, the more attention I paid toward fulfilling the requirements for that particular stage to then move on to the next stage. It was a blast, and I certainly realized in that moment that the power and benefit of the American contingency universe is that we get people together and we do the trainings and we walk people through the stuff we talk about on the podcast and on the website and the training videos that Denny G and his cohort provide. It's important that you actually practice this stuff. I'll show you a video of somebody changing a tire all day long, but until you jack your own car up and realize that you should have loosened the lug nuts while the car was still on the ground, now you got to lower the thing, because certainly you do not want to put that crowbar thingy on those lug nuts and then try to kick the lug nut loose while it's up on the jack, because if you've ever done that before, I'm going to be willing to bet you watched your car go forward because you didn't set the parking brake, and now your jack just got crushed underneath the weight of the car. Not such a good scenario. You can watch it on video all day long, but until you actually put your hands into the grease, the mud, the mire, you don't really know how you're going to behave. So showing your kids simple first aid tricks, taking them to a CPR class, teaching them to swim at your local Y, whatever it might be, those things, along with carrying bandages or gauze or antiseptic wipes. I mean, this is the stuff that, the American Red Cross happily teaches children basic first aid at a very, very affordable price. YMCAs do this as well. Depending on how out in the country you are, you might have to go travel a little bit to find this stuff, but it is available to you if you want other people to help you teach. If you feel like you can do it on your own, by all means. I mean, you're not going to be able to give your kids a CPR certification training, piece of paper like the American Red Cross would, but a piece of paper in an emergency doesn't actually tell me diddly squat. The ability to do the action is what shows me that you are prepared. So likelihood that your 9-year-old needs a certification piece of paper proving that they know CPR is way less important than the actuality of watching their kid fall down, and all of a sudden go into some level of cardiac arrest. Their airways blocked and their breathing isn't happening and their circulation's shutting down. Like, what is your kid going to do? These are opportunities to talk them through, gamify the situation, and really teach them how to do. Obviously, CPR is the very extreme side of this. More than likely, we're going to be looking at cuts, falls, sprains that are going to be more to the immediacy of what your kids are going to experience over something as, death-defying as a heart attack in the middle of the woods for an 11-year-old. So let's focus our attention on all of it, but let's absolutely know what the lowest hanging fruit is and guide our kids through this first aid stuff. And then lastly, traveling and vacation. Like I was saying about the mom at the beginning of the show, the airport game. We love going on vacations and trips here in my family. We love being able to go out and experience new things. But kids get easily distracted in unfamiliar environments. They see something that they've never seen before. They trail off. You're sitting there looking at Google Maps trying to figure out what restaurant you want to go to. And then you turn around and your kid's 150 yards behind you, staring, or they see a game store and they just go in because they don't realize you're not paying attention to them any more than they're not paying attention to you. And before you know it, there's a separation and there's a panic, and we don't want to deal with that, right? We want everybody to be alert, yell platypus, aardvark, whatever it needs to happen, get somebody else's attention. I have an issue with this. People will be walking in front of me, and then I'll see like a penny press machine or somebody carved a bear out of a tree stump, and I'll just stop and start taking pictures with this tree stump bear. And then my girlfriend will turn around. I'm 100 yards behind over here taking selfies with this tree stump bear. And she walks back and she's like, could you at least yell my name? Just let me know. And I'm like, Aardvark! She's like, it's too late. I'm already pissed at you. Let me know when you're stopping. So teaching kids to stay close at airports and train stations and very busy touristy spots. Practicing the buddy system with a sibling, a friend, with you. Teaching them, again, identifying key locations like security personnel, the customer service, the exits. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. When you are looking to teach your children situational awareness in any one of these situations, we want to remind them that phones, headphones, these are distractors. And while they are tools to help us enjoy things, they can be the reason why we find ourselves in unfamiliar situations and all of a sudden potentials for panic mode set in simply because we were staring at the phone, stepping out into streets without looking both ways, getting cut off from friends and families in crowded areas. If they have headphones on, now they can't even hear you yell for them. So whether it's in travel and vacation, whether it's at assemblies and large gatherings and events, shopping, public spaces, school, playgrounds, just in the neighborhood, close to home, and absolutely at home, there's all these opportunities to teach kids situational awareness. And through the teaching, they can learn it and they can do it. And again, I highly recommend that you bring some of their friends' parents in on the game and say, hey, why don't we all do these things? And it could be setting up a bunch of drills in the backyard of one of y'all's houses, or all of you going out to public spaces and asking and quizzing the kids on where exits are, or where the security personnel are, or where the customer service booth is. Like, it's just you also look up from your darn phone and notice the world that's going on around you. And are we teaching our kids the things that we think are common sense now, but at some point in our youth, they were not common sense. And I don't remember how my parents taught me to look both ways or to know exits or to find security personnel when I got separated. But I remember getting lost in an airport once, and I remember getting lost in a shopping mall once, and I remember going up to those customer service desks and having my mom's name announced, and she came and got me, and everything was all hunky-dory. Like, I remember doing those things. I don't remember how I was taught to do those things, and that's almost the point, right? Like, we don't necessarily need the kids to remember. I remember on October 23rd of 2024, we discussed situational awareness at home, school, and at playgrounds. And here are the 11 things that you told me to be mindful of. We don't need them to be able to Rolodex through everything that we've taught them. We want it to become muscle memory. So at some point, they're like, I don't know why I do it this way. I just do. I just look both ways before crossing. When I want to send a text message and I'm walking down a busy street, I don't sit there and stop so everybody has to walk around me. I step off onto the side, in front of a store window or something like that where I'm not in everybody's way, and then I send my text message, and then I get back out into that stampede of water buffalo. Like, swim your ass out of the school of fish and don't be in the way standing there because you're entitled and you think that you should be able to stand wherever the heck you want and send whatever text message you want, while everybody else who's also looking down at their phone is potentially running right into your back because no one's looking up. Let's be those people who are looking up. And that's what situational awareness and teaching it to your kids provides. Critical life skills. And it starts at home. Teaching your kids to be observant, staying calm in all of these environments that I've talked about, and giving them the tools to handle unexpected situations with confidence. Home, school, the outside world. We cannot possibly be everywhere all the time for them. And we cannot be holding their hand every single time we would like to be, because at some point they're going to want to be autonomous, they're going to want to be independent, and they're going to want to show you that they're all grown up and they're a big boy or a big girl, and they're going to want to go off and they're going to want to do some things on their own. And they don't want to constantly have you stalking them, trying to make sure that they're safe. Gear them up with the tools to keep themselves safe, and understanding that it's an ebb and flow, and that just because they drop the ball in one particular opportunity does not mean that they failed at their situational awareness, but it does provide a feedback opportunity to discuss where they could potentially behave in a more beneficial way next time versus what they actually did, because you learn more through the inaccuracies of your behaviors. You learn more by doing something not as well as you would prefer. When I get confused or frustrated or overwhelmed or do something wrong according to my own judgment style of myself, I learn more by falling flat on my face than I ever do in my successes. Teach them to have that level of resiliency. Speaking of that kind of resiliency, that's what we're going to be talking on next month when I bring on our mental health member of the AMCON team, and we talk about defending your mental health and wellness. And that's really what this episode has been about in its own way. By practicing situational awareness with your kids, they're better prepared to keep themselves and others safe. This is going to help your mental health and wellness, knowing that when they're out of sight, that they are taking care of themselves. This is going to help their mental health and awareness, because they're going to feel like they have autonomy and independence and that they can do things without you hovering and always being around them. Practice these situational awareness tips with your family today. Start with the small activities, build these habits up over time, and your kids will feel comfortable, prepared, and more confident. We learned this back in the day. Let's not skip over teaching it to the kids now and those coming tomorrow. All right, my friends, as always, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. When you're ready to prepare, grow, and share by building the skills, the network, and the confidence to be prepared for whatever comes next, join us at AmericanContingency.com. We're here when you're ready. I'll keep the fire going so you can find your way. Talk to you next time, my friends. Bye-bye.